With Dracula AD 1972, such a what do you call recognized return to the Peter Cushing, Christopher Lee Dracula oeuvre, you knew there was going to be a sequel, and the next year sure was. The Satanic Rites of Dracula is a 1973 British horror film directed by Alan Gibson and produced by Hammer. This is the 8th film in the Hammer's Dracula series, and the 7th and final one to feature Christopher Lee as Dracula. The film was also the 3rd to unite Peter Cushing and Van Helsing as Van Helsing with Lee, following Dracula 1958 and Dracula AD 1972. Now, this is in the future. In 1974, a Secret Service agent barely escapes from an English country house in which satanic rituals are being celebrated. Before he dies of his wounds, he reveals to his superiors that 4 prominent members of society, a government minister, a peer, a general, and a famous scientist, are involved in a cult led by Qin Yang. Photos of the 4 dignitaries taken by the agent are developed, and the 5th photo, apparently showing an empty doorway, is assumed to be a mistake. Now, in order to avoid any reprisals by the minister, Secret Service official Colonel Matthews called in Scotland Yard's Inspector Murray to work on the case independently. Murray suggests consulting a noted occult expert, Professor Lorimer Van Helsing, again, the sequel. Now, the cult kidnaps the Secret Service Secretary Jane, who was later bitten by Count Dracula. Murray, Secret Agent Torrance, and Van Helsing's granddaughter Jessica arrive at the country house. They separate. Murray and Torrance investigate inside the house, where they meet Qin Yang. Jessica enters the house through the cellar, where she finds Jane chained to a wall and is revealed to be a vampire. Again, the woman in peril trope that's in every Dracula movie. The ensuing commotion awakens other female vampires who are likewise imprisoned, but they attempt on feed on Jessica. The agents hear Jessica screams and come to her rescue. Murray kills Jane with a stake, and he escapes the grounds with Jessica and Torrance. Meanwhile, Van Helsing visits his scientist friend Julian Keeley, whom he recognizes among the 4 conspirators. The mentally unstable Keeley is involved in bacteriological research designed to create a virulent strain of bubonic plague. Van Helsing is eventually shot by a guard and passes out. When he revives, Keeley's dead body hangs from the ceiling, and the plague bacillus is gone. Now, Keeley referred to the 23rd of the month, which Van Helsing discovers is the Sabbath of the Undead. Now, Keeley's research notes Van Helsing to be a reclusive property developer, leads Van Helsing to a reclusive property developer, D.D. Denham, who funded Keeley's research. Van Helsing speculates that the 5th photo of the empty doorway may actually have been of Dracula, whose image cannot be captured. He theorizes that Dracula wants to finally die, but in his evil will want to destroy all of humanity with him. Van Helsing visits Denham in his headquarters, built on the churchyard where Dracula died in the previous film, and discovers that he's actually Dracula. He tries to shoot him with a silver bullet, but is beaten by the Count's conspirators. Dracula decides that killing Van Helsing would be too simple and has him moved to the country house. Jessica, Murray, Matthews, and Torrance, while observing the country house, are attacked by snipers. A lot going on here. Torrance and Matthews are killed, and Murray and Jessica are captured. Murray awakes in the cellar and escapes the clutches of Qin Yang, revealed also to be a vampire herself. After staking her through the heart with a mallet, he destroys the other female vampires with clear running water from the fire sprinkler system. Now, when Dracula arrives at the house of Van Helsing, he announces to his henchmen that Jessica will be his consort, uncorrupted by the plague that his 4 horsemen, including Van Helsing, will carry out into the world. The conspirators, who had considered the plague a threat not to be used, begin to question their master. However, Dracula's hypnotic command brings them back under his control. He commands John Porter to break the vial, releasing the bacteria and immediately infecting the minister. Murray overpowers a guard in the computer room. The guard's metal baton smashes the computer panel, causing an explosion that starts a fire and unlocks the ritual room. 2 uninfected conspirators escape. Murray rescues Jessica, and the infected minister and the plague bacteria burn in the fire. Dracula eventually attacks Van Helsing again, but his prey escapes through a window into the woods. Van Helsing lures Dracula into a hawthorn bush where he's entangled. Van Helsing grabs a fence post and drives it through his heart. Dracula then disintegrates into ashes, and Van Helsing retrieves the Count's ring. Now, Joanna Lumley plays a bit part as Jessica Van Helsing, and you have Freddie Jones actually as Dr. Julian Keeley, so a very interesting casting here. Now, In addition to Lee and Cushing returning from Dracula AD 72, Coles also reprised his role as Inspector Murray. The part of Van Helsing's granddaughter, Jessica, was recast with Lumley as a more mature character than portrayed by Stephanie Beacham in the previous film. The screenplay, a mixture of horror, science fiction, and a spy thriller, was written by Don Houting, who had worked on Doctor Who. Now, television veteran John Kasakavas penned the original score. Now, production began in November 72. The working title of the movie was Terrible Dracula is Dead and Well and Living in London, a reference to the stage and film musical review Jacques Brel is Alive and Well and Living in Paris. Lee was not amused. Speaking at a 1973 press conference announcing the feature, he said, "I'm doing it under protest. I think it's fatuous. I can think of 20 adjectives. Fatuous, pointless, absurd. It's not a comedy, but it's got a comic title. I don't see the point." The film was eventually retitled, but was still marketed in French as Dracula vit toujours au Londres. Dracula is still living in London. As movie historian Jonathan Rigby has observed, the feature wrapped on January 3rd, 73, 15 years to the day after Dracula, the first film in the Hammer series, finished shooting. Now, this was the last Hammer movie that Lee and Cushing would make together, although they would reunite one final time 10 years later for House of the Long Shadows. The feature was not released in the States until 79, when Dynamite Entertainment distributed a heavily edited version under the title Count Dracula and His Vampire Bride. Now, All Movie called the film the least interesting in the Hammer Dracula series. Time Out wrote that a lot of weak action scenes and weaker lines, but still a vast improvement on Dracula AD 72. I can tell you this, it was like James Bond meets Dracula meets like kind of, Enter the Dragon trope with like the Oriental situation. Like I said, some of it made sense and some of it didn't make sense, but everybody thought Stephanie Beacham was going to be in this movie, but he heard Joanna Lumley, and Joanna Lumley, she's an okay actress, more comedic than dramatic, but it's not even a thrill ride. It doesn't make any sense. A lot going on here. Snipers and vampires and bubonic plague and all kind of different stuff. Not enough Satan is what I'm saying. It is what it is. So, ladies and gentlemen, I give it 2 stars out of 4. By the way, if you like what we're doing here with our Dracula and horror Hammer movie podcast, let us know with a like, comment, and subscribe. And don't forget, this movie really sucked in places, but still worth a watch if you can find it on DVD in a compilation package or whatever. It's where the title was better than the movie. That's a bad sign. Have a good one. Bye.